background starts in Connecticut. Then in Long Island Sound, where we did a little bit of lobstering when I was a young fella. And it was exciting at the time, but school was in the forecast, so I went to Quinnipiac College for 4 years and University of New Hampshire for another 4 on my postgraduate work. And while I was doing my postgrad work, I moved to Kittery Point, Maine. And my landlord was a lobsterman, Ralph Thompson. In fact, his grandson, the 3rd generation, Evan Thompson, is lobstering now with me. And it's been the greatest of lives. It couldn't be any better.
When I was a kid, growing up down here, that's kind of what you did. You fished, you worked for the full-time guys. I think I started when I was the summer I turned 12. Yeah, we used to use the wooden pegs, and then they went to plastic pegs. Yeah, we used to do that. I used to get, I think my first job was $10 a day. That's what we got. That was pretty good, actually.
I've been fishing with my dad since I was little. That's all I've ever wanted to do.
Late 50s. A friend of mine we went down there and I got hooked. I went down and I helped lug bait down over the brow with a gig. I've been doing it ever since.
Well, I started way back in the Gus Ellie day. And I used to come home with creosote in my hair from painting Gus Ellie's traps inside the wooden laths on the half-round traps. And my mother would be irate at me. Because I had really light hair back then, you know, and I would come home with creosote all through my hair, and my hair all stuck everywhere.
This is the first year I got my license, 1988, but in the summer months, I worked for my uncle who owned Sanders Lobster. I worked at his lobster pound for a couple of years, plus I worked for my cousin who ran Sanders Bait Store, which is now Island Seafood.
My brother and I grew up in it. We started fishing. We went out on my dad's boat all the time. We were 5. We used to get $3 a day of peg lobsters, the wooden pegs that would go in the claws. Eventually transitioned to bands, but I don't think he gave us much more money than that. And then I think we had our own traps by the time we were 7 or 8 years old in a skiff. Grew that, and then our last few years in high school and through college, we ran my father's inshore boat. At that time, he had an offshore boat fishing out of Fairhaven, Mass. His 36-foot inshore boat was available, so we ran that.
I first started when I was 12 years old. My brother and I always messing around boats and figured it'd be fun to go lobstering, like everybody else at the time. So we bought a 20-foot Grand Banks dory out of Gloucester and 5-horse outboard and some old wooden traps we had and went at it. Didn't make a whole lot of money the first year, but we had a lot of fun. And found out we couldn't work together, as brothers often do, and the following year we each got our own boats and own gang of gear and split up.
Well, I was just informed a couple minutes ago, my mother found a picture of me at 2 years old, and yeah, I just put on Facebook a little bit ago a picture of me on Norton Road with my great-grandfather standing in front of the boat that my father was finishing off. So I guess I've been fishing for a while.
I started lobstering, I was probably 8 years old, and I got my first license when I was 10, so this is my 47th year, I think.
That's a good question. I guess it just gets in your blood, the independent part and being outside, the physical nature of it. I don't know, but I can't really, it's like anything you do. If you like it, that's what you do.
Freedom is the neat thing, but you fall in love with it because you get to play with boats. I mean, how much fun is that? To go out, you start off in a little skiff, you're playing on the water, and then you hear motors, you're a boy, motors are neat. and then they let you have a few traps, and you make money, and you learn you can make money from it, and it's fun. And you're surrounded by all like-minded people like yourself.
No time clock. I do, it's just, you're your own person. You come and go as you damn well please.
Freedom. Bottom line, you can have the worst day in the world, the next morning when the sun comes up and you look at that sun coming up, it's a new day. Come in at night, you come in the afternoon, you see the sun going between the bridges over there. It's a beautiful thing.
Lobstering to me is kind of like Christmas morning, you know? It's the excitement of Christmas morning for a young kid, because every day you go out, you're going to experience something different every single time you go. It seems so repetitious, lobstering, but every time you go, it's a unique experience, because you never know what's going to be in the traps when you lift them.
Every day, every single hour is different out there. You never know what you're gonna pull up in your trap. You never know what the weather's gonna do. And, you know, the things you see in nature out there is just mind-blowing. The average person, you can't even describe it half the time, what you see and what you go through every day.
Good question. I guess the allure of you never know what you're gonna get, what's down there, what's gonna come up in the trap.
Wow. What about lobstering keeps me going? I guess I'm an eternal optimist. I always think things are gonna get better, and I'm just always hopeful that, you know, the season's gonna be better than the last, and I love being out on the water and you know, being on the boat, and I guess basically that's, yeah.
I can't put my finger on it. Just trying to keep 1 foot ahead of that lobster. Yeah, the challenge of catching. I think it's an ego trip. Who has a job that when they get home, finish their supper, wish they could go to work again? If that helps, that's how much it's cost me 2 lives, 2 homes. Oh yeah.
Things I don't like about lobstering, as you get middle age, you realize your teachers in school were correct about physical labor on the body. It won't last forever. No sick days, no matched 401k, no dental plan, no insurance, none of that stuff. So if you're single, you're okay.
There's a few things that I don't enjoy. Going out after a storm is not particularly keen and fun. Straightening the gear out, you know, tangles. And when the boat breaks, I guess, you know, those are the 2 major things that it's not fun about lobstering.
A southwest wind, definitely. Having gear be a mess, I don't know, just running into problems, we never had this problem, but maybe if like your boat's not working, that's always pretty bad. But it's easy for a day to go bad, but I guess it's always easy to make it a good day too.
I don't enjoy all the regulations, the government interference, the environmental interference that we're currently being subjected to. Most of the people that, even with the government, we're dealing with bureaucrats, suits that don't know anything, they're drawing a paycheck. They don't care whether we survive or not. Environmentalists, one thing everybody should realize, there's no more bigger environmentalists than lobster fishing. We care about our industry, we care about what goes on out there. We have solid conservation methods for over 100 years have kept this industry going.
So what I don't like about lobstering is just the unknown, I guess, right now is with the whale rules, the bait supply, the likelihood of storms really setting you back. There's just a lot of unknown in the industry right now that's pending.
The storms, the tangles, just stuff like that.
Is there anything you don't enjoy?
No,
Interesting.
no, not at all. There's some things, sometimes are drudgery, the trap repair and things like that. But all in all,
Does anything keep you awake at night about the business?
oh yes, oh God, yes. Yeah, you're always on the edge. You have 800 traps out there. You're constantly monitoring the weather. You're constantly worrying about whether, everything is going to operate on the boat. You've got 5 or 6 months to make a year's income. So if you lose, let's say 3 weeks due to an engine failure, you worry about that. It's constant worry. It's constant worry.
Bad weather and the cold. Yeah, the winds with the waves, not so much. And the cold, the older you get, the more the cold bothers me, so.
Careful now, Winters. I used to fish winters, but not anymore. I don't like the cold.
I really don't like I try to make sure that this isn't too coarse, but I don't like the people. The guys in Kittery, most of them are good. But there's a lot of them that are just greed drives them, just greed. And, growing up as a kid, fishing with other fishermen who have passed away, who were really, really seriously old school guys, nobody was like that.
It hasn't been up to us to make any changes, really. It's just, how shall I say? It's them down in Augusta that do that. Right now, things are going smooth. I mean, it seems like everybody's getting along. When it ain't broke, don't fix it. It's my opinion. It's what my old man always said. Now you've got all this modern equipment and everything else. I mean, it's not like it used to be years ago. You had a box compass in the boat and that was about it. You didn't have all this modern day electronics and all that.
Sure, the changes,
What's changed since you started?
just about everything. The size of lobsters that you can keep, it's gradually gotten bigger. The price of bait, the price of fuel, just a lot of the different regulations that you do now. Is the size of the rope, the weak links that you have to put on your rope. The pendant marking there's a new regulation that's pending right now that they want to enforce. Everybody in the state of Maine, they want to have changeover, so you have to put a 3-foot section of purple rope on your line, but it's pending, it's not up and it's not final yet, and it's going to be a lot of work that's going to have to be done before you can put your gear back in the water.
How do you feel about that? All of these changes in the laws, the way the laws are changing.
How do I feel about the changes in pendant? I guess, yeah, it's going to be a lot of work for us, but if it keeps it so that we can maintain the number of traps that people can fish, so they don't get cut back, a little bit of work now, I guess will hopefully in the long run will be better. But who knows?
Back when I was in my younger days, fishing here was pretty spectacular. You could catch a lot of lobsters. And as the Gulf is warming and getting warmer, we are seeing that change. I think a lot has to do with climate change, but it also has to do with, you know, the stuff that we're putting on our lawns around here, you know, to kill grubs and things of that nature, you know. It all ends up back in the ocean. And unfortunately, when it ends up back in the ocean, then it tends to affect the ocean and the sea life that lives there, you know. For myself, I hope and pray that it doesn't end up being like New York, where they lost the lobsters. And I don't think that they lost the lobsters down there. I think that the lobsters just went east. They came this way, and they're just continuing to march to the east. Or they're staying off in cleaner waters, where they're not coming in here to shed anymore, you know. I hope that that changes. I mean, climate change is a big issue that some people don't seem to recognize.
As far as changes, when I started, guys were still using wooden buoys, wooden traps, and it was just around that time that I can remember when they outlawed the wooden buoys. All your rope was sisal, natural fiber. So all the gear now is so much better than it was. Boats were all wood with gas engines, and they didn't cost a whole lot. A lot of guys, it was just a rotating winch head. It wasn't the hydraulics we have now. In fact, I started with that. Electronics, if you had a flasher for a bottom machine, you were, that was about as technological as you're gonna get. Navigation, my dad taught me, you know, using his tachometer or a compass and a watch. And I remember when Lorraine came out. And, you know, just everything, boats, everything has gotten bigger and better. And I don't know, including gangs of gear. When I was a kid, if a guy had 300 traps, that was a huge gang of traps. And of course, you know, during the 80s, some guys had close to 2,000 traps, maybe more. And anticipated changes, I'm worried about the bait situation. Worried about just lobsters in general. Everything seems to be migrating, you know, easterly, northeasterly, and what's it going to look like? Somehow I don't think it's going to last through another generation.
What were you talking about? In terms of the catch, in terms of the technology, the gear? You haven't got enough film in that camera. So, where do you start? Be specific, ask the question.
So what changes are taking place as far as,
From wooden buoys and wooden traps to where we are now in our technology. That's what I've seen. And the composition of the rope, you were lucky to get 2 years out of a coil. And the cost of a trap was $5 when I started. That was complete. $250 if you built your own. So for $250, you could get enough material to build 100 traps. Today, each trap, as you can see out here, is $100 a piece. So I get 2.5 traps. 1981, my bait bill was $7,100. 2019, my bait bill would be just under $50,000. 1981, the lobster price was $2.50 a pound, $2.75. So, do the math. You make $100,000 in 1981. Let's take a round number. Subtract 7,200. you make 100,000 today, you subtract half of that. But those are preposterous numbers, they're not accurate, but the politics, the trap reduction, there's been so many changes.
The changes in this industry have been phenomenal. When I first started in 1962, everybody had small boats, like 25, 28 foot, gasoline-powered engines, wood traps, wood buoys, glass toggle bottles, sisal rope, hauled by a winch head instead of hydraulics like we do now. And then I think it was like 1964 or 5, the hydraulic trap hauler came into being and it changed everything. You could haul faster, haul more traps. I guess that was the start of the increase in lobster gear, because you could just haul way more and so much easier. I mean, when you're using a winch head, it's all manual labor, right? You know, and it just you just couldn't haul that many traps in a day. So as the more traps went in, people made more money, bigger boats, bigger crews. Can't say it was a bad thing, because I mean it's just natural progression. And also more and more people started to get into the industry because it was easier, in my opinion, and kind of led to the escalation of everything. But it's been a good ride, and changes have been just unbelievable from when I started to where we are now.
What can they do to improve it even more, in your opinion?
Keep the damn government out of it, myself, in my opinion. You know, I don't go tell them how to do their job. They have no business telling me how to do mine.
You've had your banner years in the past, past few years, the catch has been going up and up and up. And I think it constitutes that we've been farming the lobsters, we've been feeding them, dumping bait, and constantly feeding them, where, we replenish the bait bag, we have vents, the lobsters come into the trap, they eat, the smaller ones get to go into the back of the trap, and then they vent out. We dump bait bags constantly. That's not going on so much now, with the dumping of the bait bags, because bait's so much more expensive, so people try to make it go the distance.
Changing the catch. Seems like it's coming later. Well, we had that anomaly in 2012 where it started really early and then the price dropped like crazy. But this year here, it just seemed like the catch came later than normal, and it just really trickle effect where we fish. But it's the more traps you fish and you still catch the same amount, it doesn't seem like the catch is getting up in it.
Definitely a lot more shell disease than there ever was. More colored lobsters than there ever was. You're getting these weird calico lobsters and stuff. And, there's still a lot of places in the ocean where you can go and really nail them, do good. Nobody knows, what's going on. And it seems like with our habit here in Kittery with the trawls, it's a saturation fishery. You get them when they're there, and of course you get them when you're there, then they peter out, and you just saturate the bottom and catch them up. But the whole fishery has changed. We've found these lobsters. Until this past summer, I was thinking I knew it would end sooner or later, but I didn't think it was going to end. Not that I'm a scientist and I'm really kind of stupid, but from what I see, it's pretty well winding down and done.
Catch has changed dramatically. Back in the early 70s, you starved to death down here. And then in late 70s and into the 80s and into the 90s, the catch continually went up. And this this area and to the southern was the place to be. You know, the lobsters were here. Down east was starving, and now it's just the opposite. Now down east is on fire, and we're definitely on the decline down here. And unfortunately, I don't think you're going to see the catch reverse itself, but you know, to be super down here, I think you're always going to be able to make a living, or at least for a while longer. But you're never going to see the big numbers like they have down Maine.
It's always bad every year. It's I've had a good year. It started out slow and finished pretty strong. And it seems like since about 2012, 2011, the catches have just gone up and up. And I mean, you look at the amount of lobsters that are being landed in the state of Maine, and it's incredible. I know it's been off a little bit, you know, the past year or two, but still they're just incredible numbers. I don't know how long you can support that.
Well, there's less lobsters. Yeah. There was a time in the river here. I mean, it was startling what you could do.
It went down a lot this year, but you know, maybe everything's cyclical. I don't know, because we have a lot of years of up years, and then the past few years it's gone down a little. You know, not compared to what it was, say, 5 years ago.
Well, the last 5 years have been great. This year was a bummer.
Why do you suppose that is?
I don't know. I know what they're saying, and I'm kind of leaning towards what they're saying.
And what is that?
Climate change. You don't see the small lobsters anymore. I don't bet you I ain't seen a half a dozen all this year.
The way we fish has changed tremendous since the collapse of the fishing industry. There were places you get 3-4 miles past the shore, that's where the fish congregate. That was pretty much owned by draggers and gill netters and this. You weren't going to put a lobster trap there because the dragger's going to tow it out. That's his lawn. So hence, you follow the lobsters out through the different depths, but you got so far and then you're out of business. The lobsters are going to warmer, deeper water. So everybody haul up. Ground fishing's eased up. One guy goes out, does pretty good, the other guys start coming. Now we have too many traps for the few fish boats that are left. They don't fight with us as much. Population had increased. Our catches are, we can catch a lot of lobsters in the course of the day. And that can be from, our season is still May through mid-January. It ends every January 15th or so when the tide cycle comes. But I've had a month once in March, we were catching $10 lobsters and we were doing 600-700 pounds a day for 2-3 days a week. It was I'll probably never see it again.
Future lobster in our community. Well, if you count on the boats over there in the mooring field, there's not too many lobster boats in that mooring field. And if you don't come down here too early in the morning, it's awful hard to get a parking spot to even get to your boat. If you have to come down in the afternoon to work on your boat, or a Saturday or Sunday to get prepared for the following day, it's pretty difficult. So the access, that's gonna be the hardest part, I think, for people in the town of Kittery Point anyways, that fish.
5 years we're done. That's my theory on the whole thing. My son's a licensed lobsterman, and I pushed him towards a shipyard because there's no future in this business. It's gone.
I would say the positive is the resource itself is very healthy on balance. There'll be ups and downs like we're seeing this year, but because of management efforts and so forth, the resource is healthy. Some of the worries of the sort of storm clouds gathering that make it not so healthy possibly for companies like ours and for lobstermen themselves are increased regulations, cost to operate, cost of bait, which is being further regulated, potential whale regulations that, that is, hopefully you've already talked to some lobstermen about that, but that's something that we could see some pretty draconian measures come down on something that most of these lobstermen have never even seen a right whale. So things like that are a little more problematic, which is, again, frustrating because what we have is a real success story to tell, and compared to most wild caught fisheries, a very healthy resource on balance.
Yeah, as far as the future of the industry, of course, geographically, that area has shrunk. I mean, it used to go down to New Jersey. I mean, Long Island Sound, it's dead now. Basically, anything south of Cape Cod, the fishery has disappeared, and the whole climate change thing, I don't think you can deny that it's happening and that it's having an effect. How much, man has to do with that, I don't know, but, you look at other fisheries and they've come and gone, and I can't think lobster is anything special that, it's not gonna be the same as any other fishery. It's gonna have its time, and then will probably go away.
The lack of vegetation, which we're seeing now, the increase in different predators, the green crab, we're seeing the black sea bass up here, they all feed on the juvenile lobster. So, and they've never been able to predict the population anyhow. They get these, they never saw what was happening in the last decade.
Well, it's hard to tell. I mean, we don't know how the climate change is going to affect the temperature of the water. The temperature of the water has a lot to do with where lobsters are and what they do. So it's hard to, I don't know. I'm hoping it doesn't change much, but the indications are that it is, so I don't know.
There's a future in it. Absolutely. I would tell my kids to do it again. You just gotta be smart. You may have to market your own lobsters. I repurchased this dock for that reason through the other people that had it. It wasn't our family, we lost it, and they were on board with me buying it back, and there's so many options. We don't need to just depend on the middleman. Fish less pots, sell your lobsters on the days off, get $2, $3 more a pound, and you're fine.
For myself, I hope and pray that it doesn't end up being like New York, where they lost the lobsters. And I don't think that they lost the lobsters down there. I think that the lobsters just went east. They came this way, and they're just continuing to march to the east. Or they're staying off in cleaner waters, where they're not coming in here to shed anymore, I hope that changes. I mean, climate change is a big issue that some people don't seem to recognize.
Make it home. Round trip. No, any day is a good day.
I guess a good day is coming back. No, I like having a good catch, but I mean, I've had days where, catch hasn't been the greatest, but it's still been a good day, just being able to be out on the water, but having a nice catch that's good too.
You were with me a whole day, right? A whole day. You tell me what made me the happiest. What? Come on.
I think it was the catch.
The catch? The catch is good. I've had catches where you could bring it home in your lunchbox, but it was still a good day. It's just being out there.
When you're out lobstering, people ask, how much do you make in a day? And it's very hard to answer that question because it's really 6 months out of the year that we do really well, and you have to catch 6 months worth of income in that period to make up for all the days that barely cover cost. as in like in mid-February, I might go fishing, just keep my crew working. Where the boat got paid, fuel, bait, him, I didn't make nothing, but I got to go out and play, and I like that. With expenses for the vessel I have, which is a larger boat, you've got to at least make $1,000 to the boat stock, and that will probably give me maybe $100 to myself, $200. Between the cost of bait having gone up so much, to haul 300 traps and put a good amount of bait so that you will fish is going to $400 to $600 in bait. You're not going to find steady crew for $150, $200 a day minimum, and then you've got just the wear and tear on the boat that you're not recovering costs. A good day, you got to come around $3,500 a day, or even $5.
Typical good day on the water. No wind, plenty of losses.
You know, a lot of guys do this for the money and the catch. And the money and the catch is a wonderful thing, it really is. But that's not really what makes everybody happy. Money doesn't make you happy. I mean, the more you get, the more you're gonna spend, the more headaches it's gonna cause. So I get whatever that guy upstairs allows me to get, and I'm happy with it. And so I guess the answer to your question is if I come home, if I leave safe and I come home safe, it was a very successful day.
A typical good day on the water is getting out on time, seeing a nice sunrise, having all our gear in the stream there, not having any tangles, not having as much seaweed to deal with, having lobsters in the crates. It's always really nice being able to fill the tank, and just both of us being in a good mood, really.
I haven't had one. Oh, yes, I did. August 20th, at 6:18 in the morning, I sunk. Yeah. It's the day that Jerry died, Garcia. At 6:18, my boat went down because my digital clock, when we brought the boat back up, said 6:18 on it. That was not a good day.
Well, the latest nor'easter that came through, that led to a bunch of not so good days. For me, not so bad, but for some of the other guys, I lost a lot of gear. I had some gear that was, banged up a little bit. I've lost a few traps, but not like some people have. And but it's like I fish a lot of stuff in the harbor, and so I'm at the mercy of slack tide, and like right now we're having the big tides, and that's always a pain. It messes gear up, and you get these big snarls, and anything that's floating along the bottom seems to collect on the trap lines, and I've had days where I've come back and it's just my arms feel like rubber from just what would normally take me 20 minutes to do can take an hour to do. When we have the big tides, but it's all part of it.
You get towed in, you don't catch anything, something breaks, that's not a good day on the water.
Bad days are expensive breakdowns where you can't get parts in the height of the season. That's probably the scariest thing. People, or a major engine fail. That could be financially ruining. Horrible.
Fog. I hate the fog.
That when the deckhand says to you that I'm tired and I want to go home, and you throttle up, and then the boat goes.
Back around trip, coming home on a tow rope. No, that's a tough question, because you can still have a terrible day and it ain't a bad day, yeah, so what, you paid your bait bill, and you paid your help, but you didn't make any money for yourself, but that's the game.
Well, the right whale thing is, and it's, to me, where we fish, it's not, all this stuff is not necessary. It's being pushed by a certain group who have their issues and concern, which is, that's just the way it is, but, and they probably all have more money than we do, but most of the whale issues is pretty much offshore, where we are within 3 or 4, even 5 miles of shore. I mean, you'll occasionally see a whale, but mostly they're Menke whales. But you don't see, I've never seen a right whale.
The lobster industry and the government, unless you live off the government, have a state job or the government job, they haven't done anything right. They've never done the country any good. Politics are bad. Everybody's in politics for themselves. They're not there for the better part of the country anymore. The country doesn't try to better itself with politics. They're no good. There's not one fisherman who is wanting to catch the last lobster. There's not one fisherman that wants to hurt a whale, hurt a seal. Yeah, we yell at them. There are hindrances. We know how to deal with hindrances, and we want to fish. And I want my son to fish. I want my son's son to fish. And when I'm gone, like the fellow that built this place, he's probably thrilled that we're still fishing. And nobody wants to break the ocean. We're not corporate America. We're all individuals. It's like farming. Let's keep it going.
It's all well and good that the government's getting involved with it, but I think that the government needs to stop stirring the pot, because since the government has gotten involved in the fishing industry, we've lost our dragons, we've lost our gilletters, and we're down to the lobstermen now, and the lobstermen and the tuna fishermen, and it's a dwindling empire.
The tariffs were unnecessary, but, I mean, as far as the lobster industry, they were unnecessary. But what the government did this year with the herring industry was, it crippled us.
I've been privileged to work with every marine resource commissioner since 1973, and all a bunch of, by and large, very dedicated people. Don't always see eye to eye for sure, and especially when the trap limits came in, this area particularly was against trap regulations. They eventually cut most of us in half with the amount of traps we fished, down to 800, and it was a pretty hard financial hit for all of us. But the current commissioner we have is probably, in my opinion, the best we've had in the entire time I've fished. He certainly reaches out to the industry, which no other commissioner has done to the extent this man has. And he's knowledgeable of the issues, and while he gets a lot of bad flack for some of the policies he does, because come right down to it, he's still a politician. And but he tries to represent the industry the best he can. I think he's done an outstanding job, and it's been a pleasure to work with the man.
I think the government is trying, but I think they're under a lot of pressure from environmental groups and lawsuits and so forth, and unfortunately money talks, and I don't think all the blame for like the right whale situation is being put in the right place. It's like they're looking for the easy target who can't or doesn't have the resources to fight back, which is us, the fishermen. I don't think we're nearly as much as the problem as shipping and or even the Canadian crab industry, because the whales have even migrated further that way. And most lobster fishermen, when you ask how many right whales have they seen in their life, most of them are going to tell you none.
society in general, the young people don't tend to be wanting to do the hard work thing, that's number one. They want to push computer keys and whatever. It is expensive, and you also, nowadays, you can't just go get a license. You gotta do an apprenticeship and get on a list and a waiting list, and they have that all, they have a method there where so many people get out and retire so many tags, and then they'll let somebody in. So, you know, that's the combination of all of it. It is expensive. I mean, a decent boat, safe boat, that you want to fish to make a living in, you know, you're looking at $60,000, $70,000 to buy a decent used boat, and that's not, you know, top of the line. And then you figure roughly your traps. You could buy used traps. You could usually get some deals on that, I guess. But you know, if you want to buy new traps, you know, you're looking at a $100 trap. So, you know, and then you start tacking on the rope and buoy and everything else. So yeah, it's an expensive business, and you got to be self-motivated. You got to get up every morning. Nobody's getting you up. Nobody's telling you to go to work. Nobody's telling you when to quit. That's all on you if you're going to do this. So, you know, there's no time clock. There's nothing like that.
With kids nowadays, the way they're pampered, a little more than we all were, they need to know you gotta have to work. And it doesn't matter, oh, it's hard, it's this, it's that, go to work. Follow what the other generations did. So if you wanna work in this business and you wanna put work, effort into it, you'll do fine.
Well, I can say if they want to get into it, they're going to do it anyway. I mean, you've got some couple of young fellows here now that one of them just got out of college and he wants to go the West way. Once they get it in their blood, you ain't going to change their mind, I'll tell you. You weren't going to change mine.
It doesn't sound like you ever had any regrets.
I've got a few regrets, but it's got much to do with lobster.
That is a really, really, really tough one because the government, again, has really made it, you know, with these laws, the way they have them. You know, they were gonna give out a bunch of licenses this year, and because of the way the bait prices was and the way the catch was, they hauled back on the reins at the last minute. But early in the year, they got some of these guys that have been on the list for 10 and 15 years waiting for licenses, or 20 years even, been waiting for licenses. They were all gonna get licenses. Anybody with 10 years and longer that's been on the list was all gonna get licenses. And then they turn around and haul back on the reins at the last minute. And, you know, it's a tough business to get into.
What I'd say to any young person that is interested in it, I think there's still a bright future with, like any industry, some unknowns. But if it's something you're passionate about, I would say pursue it. I would say make sure you get your education first and possibly even have some backup plans, whether you learn a trade in addition to it. But again, for somebody that attacks it, that's passionate about it, that treats it like a business, I think it can be a great industry, and an industry that to be your own boss and be out on the water, still some pretty great things about it.
If somebody young asked me if they thought it was a good idea to go lobstering, and that's really what they wanted to do, I'd encourage them.
I'd like to see in this area here a few more young guys coming in, because I'm 77, Harold's 76, Waldron's 77. I mean, there are some real old, dusty old lobsters. And we're gonna be stepping off here soon. And there's no one here to take our place. That'll leave it to about 3 or 4 fishermen. And there's an opportunity here.
You talked about, a few minutes ago, you talked about the fact that you're a bunch of old farts out of the water. So what advice would you give young people to encourage them to get into this business?
Oh, they're on a waiting list that you have to have X number of fishermen dropping out with X number of traps. A fisherman has to leave, and with that fisherman, 800 traps. So let's say that I was fishing 400 traps. I retire. I give my license up. I retired, but it's only 400 traps. You can't come in until another 400 traps disappear. Right? My deckhand waited 14 years after he finished his apprenticeship. So all of a sudden he becomes 42 years old. 42 years old. Let's say we're gonna start. So you're gonna start with 600 traps, rope and buoy. That's $75,000, plus the boat. So you're looking at probably $250,000 to make yourself sustainable in the fishery.
What I would like to be remembered as is I was a fairly straight shooter as far as catching lobsters. If you forced me to deal with you, you did have to deal with me. And I didn't mind sinking every dollar I had back into what was our history.
I don't know. They might remember you for 2 to 3 days, and I bet you they ain't gonna remember anything.
Yeah, helpful, I guess, would be the way I'd want to be remembered, you know? It's the guy that would just give you his shirt off his back if you were cold.
I gave it some thought. I don't have an answer. And I probably want to be remembered as an honest fisherman.
I hope that you know, people remember me as a good guy on the water, somebody that's willing to help somebody else out. And I mean, I can't help what other people think, but I want to be remembered well by other people.
How do I want to be? Just as an honest, decent person. Somebody who wouldn't hurt anybody else if I had a choice, you know. I don't know. Just somebody who was treating people good.
How do I want to be remembered? As a guy who just put the time in, worked, I didn't really bother too many people. Just as a guy that kept to himself, did his own thing, tried not to bother too many people.
Like I was when I was younger.
What does that mean?
Well, I've simmered.
Somebody that worked hard and tried to help out or represent his fishermen in his harbor the best he could. And hopefully that was enough.
Okay, so Jim, we were joking. I'm a fledgling guitar player, and hopefully in a few years, I'll be down in St. John in the Virgin Islands playing rhythm guitar at Skinny Legs, the bar down there in Coral Bay, and I'll be calling you folks to send me lobsters down there.
I'm going to invite Jim, the producer, and Dr. Goldstein to come up and answer any questions. Jim is the producer. He's not a lobsterman, so he won't be able to answer lobster industry questions. He's also not a climate scientist, so Dr. Goldstein might be able to answer more of those questions. I'll turn on some lights, and then I have a microphone here if you can't hear. So if you have questions, just raise your hand and I'll leave it up to Jim and you can go ahead and ask your question.
Quick question, when was this done?
2020. When I made this, the plan was to make a second part to it. And I interviewed Jason, Jim Watson, several other ocean experts about the future of lobstering, and then the pandemic hit. And that killed that for now. But this summer, I'll be picking it up again with these guys and with not just the Kittery lobstermen, but York and Algonquin. And we're going to talk about the current state of lobstering and the future of lobstering.
Thank you, first of all, but I've got a bunch of questions, but they're kind of maybe silly, but that's okay. What is it when he said that there's a pending rule about 3-foot purple rope?
Yeah.
What does that mean?
So let me just back up a minute and just introduce myself. So I'm Jason Goldstein. I'm the research director at the Wells National Estuarine Research Reserve. So a shout out to our place because a lot of people know it as Lawn Home Farm or Wells Reserve, that lawn home. So we are actually luckily for me, in any crowd, we are a non-regulatory agency. So we don't make rules. We do science, we do research, monitoring, education, stewardship. And that transcends everything from salt marshes to lobsters to invasive species. So I know y'all probably have like a ton of questions related to each one of those things. I actually am not an expert in regulatory laws in the fishery. But to answer your question about rope, I think you have to measure out your rope, right? And you have to demarcate it, and then you have to have weak and purple paint is just what they use for contrasting. So it's a real technical thing. The weak links that they use in the line are if you did have a large marine mammal that got tangled in that gear, those links would break and it would slough off. That stuff's been tested. So does that help more or less? Mm-hmm. Yeah.
They color the ropes so that they know which state they come from.
That too.
Yeah. For some reason in Maine they picked purple because the tree people use purple to mark the trees.
Right.
But you can't see purple after the first day because everything turns brown.
Right, exactly. The algae coats that stuff.
We use a shrink wrap, purple shrink wrap.
Yeah. That works great too. Yeah.
But you have to understand that each one of these, there are zones A to G. We're in G, which goes all the way from Kittery to forward. And in this, we make our own rules. Okay, so how many people enter and exit this zone is up to the lobster fishermen in this zone. And also, the state has a chart so that as you go out deeper, you have to color your rope a little bit differently as you go out, and you have to increase your break lines.
Is that for the whales to break?
Yes, basically. The lobster industry really took off because there is no bottom dwellers out there that kill lobsters any longer. Very few. Like codfish used to eat the young like grapes. They thought they were popcorn. And there's just no codfish. You don't go to the wild some or had it anyone. Reef crabs are after the clams, and it's a disaster. It's more expensive to eat a clam than it's a lobster.
By the way, in the film, Harold Niles, who was an amazing man, an amazing character. He really exemplified to me what a Maine lobsterman was, and sadly Harold has passed away. But his memory will, people are going to talk about Harold forever. Another question?
Oh, yeah. I have a couple of them. I was wondering, just this, a little technical thing. one of the gentlemen, when he would catch his lobster, would put it in a tube, like a cup, and said, well, what was that all about?
Well,
And I talked to
it
him-
seemed that each one of them had their own system on
Yeah,
how they did it. Everybody's vote was different. You probably can speak on that, so can you, Steve.
I mean, you're trying to pull these lobsters out, you're sorting, most of everything that comes out of a lobster trap actually gets thrown back. The majority of stuff, because there's so many conservation measures that are associated with the actual gear meaning the actual trap. The trap is actually not a very efficient piece of catching gear, right? And that's actually maybe works out for the better, because you're either catching stuff that's too large, that has to get thrown back, too small, that has to get thrown back. Eggers, right, which are lobsters with eggs. Lobsters that have a V-notch, which is a special little notch on their flipper that protects broodstock, right? So if you caught a lobster that didn't have eggs but still had a V-notch, it has to get thrown back. There's lots and lots of conservation measures out there. I want to note that most of those measures, most of those rules were not enforced by governments. They were enforced by the fishermen themselves. The fishermen are really good at self-regulating, and they've been doing that for over 100 years. The V-notch has been in place for, I'd say, close to 100 years. It is really tried and true. So I think this fishery is very different than, let's say, finfish or crab or any other fishery you might be familiar with, in any other part of the country. So it's really important to understand that these guys and gals, there are women who lobster also. Did anybody hear about the 105-year-old Ginny, right? Virginia? I don't remember her last name. She just passed away. She's been lobstering like her whole life. So, a shout out to a lot of women that also participate in the fishery.
Her son got retired.
Katie Johnson is in the Army now. That's her new career. She wanted to be a Marine. For some reason, I think it was health issues, but she's in the Army. So, but Katie, she worked with Harold. Yeah.
But to get back to your question, because I digressed a little bit, all these guys have like different setups on their boat. I do research on different lobster boats, and they're all set. You saw one guy can cut out 5-gallon buckets to make a chute. The whole thing is like process as fast as you can, safely, right? And then you're throwing these animals that have claws, and you've got gloves, but still they'll get you. And you're trying to bend them. So I think what we're seeing a lot of with those PVC tubes, if you stick them in, tail first, that kind of immobilizes them, and then you can go through and just band them right down the line. So they get incredibly fast at doing that. But it's just a way to organize their work, really. How they're processing. So the sternman typically does that, but it's just a way to stage everything. Some of these guys do it solo. They don't have a sternman, so they've got to do everything. And so they're going to look for ways to cut corners, not unsafely, but just as much as they can.
I asked Katie, how do you want me to put your title? And she said, I'm a sternman. And in Jimmy Baxter's, occasionally you'll see Jimmy's wife out there with him, and she's a bank executive, but she's born in the business.
There's a wonderful book out called Secret Lives of Lobsters, and it's very, very accurate, except in the last 5 years, the temperature has warmed up a little bit, and they're not crawling in as far as they used to. Go down here to the coast of York, where I'm from, and you won't see a lobster boat, or any boats now. They're all over the horizon.
Why is Gulf of Maine warming faster than everywhere else?
It's not, so it's a misnomer. I hate when people say the Gulf of Maine is warming faster than 99% of the world's oceans. That's a statement that a lot of people make. It was accurate 15 years ago. It's not accurate today. It is warming. I'm not disputing that at all. We have direct empirical evidence for that, so many different levels of data. But it's warming like a lot of other places are, right? And in some ways, last year and this year, it's actually cooling. We've had remarkably cold temperatures in the Gulf of Maine. Last year, I suspect we're gonna have really cold temperatures this year. Part of it is an oceanographic phenomenon, and part of it is just we've had a couple of pretty substantial cold snaps, as evidenced by this winter and last winter. That has changed the timing of when you see the lobsters coming back inshore. It's changed the timing and where guys set gear, when they move it. That's all dictated by temperature. So all the environmental parameters, all the environmental factors out there, and there's lots of them, temperature is probably the most important, because everything a lobster does, and I mean everything, is dictated by temperature. When they mate, when they molt, when they move, when they eat, how efficient the traps act to catch them, how fast bait breaks down. I mean, it just goes on and on. So temperature, so Gulf of Maine is warming. We've got, lots of warming trends, and I think they pointed out 2011 and 2012, one guy pointed out, was when things really changed. That's when we had our first documented marine heat wave. So I think you guys all know what a heat wave is, right? In the summertime, you get like a summer heat wave. It actually has a strict definition. It's a certain number of days above a certain temperature with a certain amount of humidity. Same thing holds true at the bottom of the ocean. Certain number of days above some thermal threshold that is adverse to marine life where we live. So we've had heat waves in 2012 was a big one. That changed everything, right? The economics, bait, fuel, everything changed. And the lobstermen really suffered from that. But we've had a heat wave multiple times since then, including, I think, the last few years consecutively. So a great resource for this is Gulf of Maine Research Institute, otherwise known as GMRI. If you just go on their website, they've got all these really cool summary graphs of temperature data and different trends throughout the last 20 years or so.
I'll give you a question from a guy from away. In our economy, so many things have become corporate, and concentrations of expertise and energy and efficiency, all that sort of thing. And this was a charming film about, a bunch of guys that have stayed individuals. What is it about lobstering that doesn't lend itself to larger organizations doing it?
You can answer that.
You can't make enough money at it. Corporate's only after the easy dollars. This is hard work. For not high risk, low return, and no guarantee. Corporate doesn't want that.
You can't find a stewardman today.
Yeah.
One of the things I was impressed about is a lot of these guys kept their sternmen on all year round, so that the boats are out of the water, they still paid them. Because a good sternman is very difficult to find to keep.
They don't want to work.
It's hard work.
One thing, I want to just make one comment that really resonated with me. This is actually my second time seeing this, and I liked it even better the second time. I mean, I liked it both times.
I've seen it a few times.
One thing that resonated with me was you were asking these guys, what do they like about what they do? And they had a lot of answers, but there were, the love of lobster. This gets to your question maybe a little bit. The passion and the love of going out and doing what they do. This is where fishermen and scientists actually have common ground, because I have the same response as they do. Without lobster, I'm going to be miserable because I'm a lobster scientist. If I don't have lobsters to study, so the last thing as a scientist I want to do is preclude any fisherman from doing what they want to do. again, I'm not talking about regulations, I'm talking about going out and doing it. So I have the same exact answers as these guys do for that question, which is, we love to be on the water, we love being on boats, we love the unknown, exciting and sometimes not exciting, right? Because these guys were saying things like, we love going out and not knowing what we're gonna catch. It's exciting. They also don't like going out and having, you know, more regulations. I get both sides of that. So I have exactly the same take on it.
Yeah, and for me, this is my 50th year as a filmmaker. When I was a kid, you know, we were all asked, so what are you going to be when you grow up? When I was probably 10 years old, I was asked that question. I said, I'm going to be a musician and a filmmaker. I'm 78 years old. I'm still a filmmaker and I'm still a musician. I've done it all my life. And I still get up every day. I can't wait to get up into the studio. I've been editing all day today. I'm working on a new documentary right now which will premiere on Juneteenth on a house in Kittery Point called Rockrest. And Rockrest was owned by a black couple, the Sinclairs, and it was opened as a guest house back between the 1940s and the 1970s when blacks were not allowed to eat anywhere or stay anywhere in New England. So we're working on that. I can't wait to get up there every day. I think about it the night before. It drives my wife crazy.
Same here. I mean, any day that I get to work with lobsters and data and go scuba diving, I'm golden. In fact, this is the worst part of the year for me. I can't do any of that right now, not easily.
Has there been any progress in the conflict at the Canadian border between the Canadian lobstermen and the Maine lobstermen?
They just fight each other.
Well, I know, they do that.
You mean in the gray zone?
No, it's the whole catch size, and you can explain it more better than I can.
I think that the Canadians have an entirely different system and I don't understand it. I don't, I can't tell you.
They don't fish by zone. They have very different fishing management areas than we do, right? As the gentleman pointed out, we have these zones from A to G. They're quite big, actually, right? Because the coast of Maine is gigantic. But Canadians have
zone 1, zone 2,
they have different zones and they have different times that they're allowed to fish. So they actually have closed zones, right? So that's very different from us. There are probably some tensions, you know, where you've got that border interface.
Right.
But the one thing, there's every 2 years, there's a joint Canadian-US lobsterman meeting. And they all get together with scientists and industry, and they talk about exactly what you're talking about. How do we get along? What are you guys doing that we can learn from? What are we doing that they can learn from? I mean, it's gonna be different. They're governed by Department of Fisheries and Oceans, which is also a federal agency, but it's just a different system.
They're subsidized by the federal government in Canada.
Yeah.
So they're, down here, you'll see an awful lot of Novi boats because the government has bought them a brand new fishing boat and they give their Novi boats away. You can tell them
Nova Scotia. Sure, Nova Scotia.
You can tell by the design of the side.
All right, couple quick questions here. Tell us about the whale regulations. They had heard a lot about how they haven't seen right whales, and I guess this right whale regulation that's pending, or they're talking about, what would that entail?
Again, I don't know a lot about the regulations, maybe somebody else does. The only thing I'll say is there's a tiered system for rolling out regulations over the next several years. I don't know how it's gonna go. It is very stressful for the fishing community on many levels. I agree with everything that was in this documentary that these guys said. I have never seen a right whale. I don't know any lobstermen that's seen one. Although this was in 2020, but
Yeah.
last year there was a minke whale in Kittery Harbor.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, frolicking among lobster traps. So I'm not one to make, I'm not a decision maker on that, but I will say that it's complicated.
They are very protective of the right whale, particularly because it's going extinct.
Yeah.
I think there's a few more this year than there ever has been. Now, the state of Maine, lobster fishermen through the Maine Lobster Association won one case out of hundreds, and they stopped all federal regulations on right whales for 6 years. So we're in about the third year of this. So they cannot mandate any new regulations on us until, I don't know what, 3 more years, I guess.
Yeah,
They've increased the breakpoints and the colored lines. The first year that they colored the lines, they colored them red, which was Massachusetts color. So nobody knew where the whales got entangled, whether they got Cape Cod or here. And the second thing they did is they picked purple. Why did they pick purple for the state of Maine? You can't see it. You can't see it after the first summer. I don't know, it's just a mystery. And as you go out, there's a colored map that the Department of Marine Resources puts out for every zone. So as you go out, you have to go from one vertical line, which is about 3 miles out. You go to 3 traps, then you go to 5 traps, and then you go to 10 trap crawls, and then you go to 20 trap crawls. So that's why they have these open stern boats. You see the back of them open, and everybody that's a new fisherman or has that more money has their boats changed over so that they can catch trawls way out there. Because you go down to York Beach today or any day, it's a nice calm day, you will not see a boat. And there's 20 of them out there. They're way over the horizon. Because the lobsters are going out over that bank and down into the mud. At 400 feet, 350 feet, 300 feet. And they don't hibernate, but if you drop a trap on their head with bait in it, they will certainly get up and grab it and eat the bait.
I just
As
wanted
Pat
to
White,
share.
who was commissioner of the Maine Lobsters Association for years, said the lobsters don't have a problem because the Maine lobstermen are feeding lobsters.
Yeah, I would argue against that a little bit, but I won't get into it.
I just
They
wanted
used
to
to-
share this
you know-
site, sorry, go ahead, keep talking.
The University of New Hampshire used to have a camera in a trap
Yeah.
out by the Isle Shoals someplace.
Yeah, that was my PhD advisor, that's
Yeah.
Dr. Win Watson.
And we used to watch it, the lobsters would go in and come right back out.
Yeah, so
Yeah,
like I was saying
showed
earlier,
us some of that.
the trap is very inefficient.
Inefficient.
It doesn't work very well, actually, but that's actually a good thing in terms of a conservation measure into round. Because if you
Really
caught.
Stupid
because-
ones go that.
Well, as soon as you close up those escape vents, right, so every lobster trap has, everybody here know basically how a lobster trap works? Like the anatomy of a lobster trap? I didn't have time to put slides together, but there's 2 head entrances, right, so they can enter from one side or the other. They go in to a kitchen area, right, there's a bait bag, they box around the bait bag. There's evidence to suggest that they don't eat a lot of bait. A lot of bait gets washed away because there's so much competition for the bait. It would be like if I put a plate of cookies out and said, you got 30 seconds to get one. You're not all gonna get one because you're gonna be competing, right? So they compete for bait, and then there's escape vents. So there's holes in the parlor, which is the second section of the trap, where lobsters can readily get out if they're small enough. That is a regulation that has to be put in, also initiated by lobstermen. So lots of lobsters go in, a lot of them go out. So you hope that you just retain the ones that are big enough, right?
The new traps now are about 4 or 5 feet, and they have 2 pilots. So they have to have one vent out of the whole system that's regulation. And they normally have a crab vent top of the door, which is 2 15/16. But the 2 side vents or the 2 vents, they usually have 3 vents or 5 vents, but those can be a little hair smaller to keep because there are an awful lot of lobsters that are legal by measuring that can escape through the vents.
Right.
But that's up to the lobster fisherman, how he has his traps.
Amanda?
Oh, I wanted to just share this, this site, if you want to learn a little bit more about lobstering and right whales and how they're connected. It is on the handout you guys have as a reference. And I think this video is, I think, maybe 5 minutes long. It's the islandinstitute.org.
Yeah.
Gives some great information.
So I have one show and tell. I know I'm gonna pass it around, please don't drop it. It is, you can't see it because you need to really look closely, but it is I bring this in and I show this to lobstermen all the time because it is these are lobsters in here that are about a month old. So these are eggs that hatched, right? The mom hatches her eggs. The eggs are planktonic, so if you don't know what that means, it means that they're free floating, right? So those eggs hatch as a larvae. And those larvae are planktonic for about a month, sometimes less, sometimes a little more. It depends on temperature. Exactly.
Does anything eat them? Something
So lots of things, and there's a whole group of people like me who are studying like what we call the early life history, the eggs, the larvae, and these little baby lobsters, because there's so much we still don't know about them, and that really helps us understand like everything that these guys are working with. That's the end product. That's the adult. That's the market size lobster that they're going to sell. Everything preceding that takes years to develop. And so with climate change, we've got to reset our mind in terms of how do these things survive? What do they eat? We just learned what these things eat like 5 years ago. They eat copepods. We didn't know that. What's a copepod? It's a tiny crustacean that looks like these. So I'll pass this around. This is a post-larval lobster, so it's in between the larval stage and the stage that you are familiar with, the little baby ones that are crawling around on the bottom. So you can just pass it around, take a look. It's white because it's in alcohol. So normally it would have the same colors as an adult lobster.
How long will it take for it to be a pound?
I knew someone was going to ask me
7
that.
years.
Depends on temperature.
7 years.
That's not it's a range. So it depends where. If you're in down East Maine, it's going to take a lot longer. If you're in Rhode Island, it's going to take probably less time because it's based on water temperature, metabolism and growth and molting and intermolt frequency and all that stuff.
So how does the green crabs, we know how extensive they are, how does that affect this with the lobsters? Do they eat that?
We've done a lot of work on green crab. Somebody pointed out, I don't remember who said it, but green crabs are probably the #1 nuisance species in the world. They're on every continent except for Antarctica. Anybody know where they're native to? Europe, right? So they came over in ballast water almost 200 years ago. We think they came into the mid-Atlantic states like New Jersey, Delaware, Maryland, and over in about the 1950s or 60s, we started noticing green crabs in the Gulf of Maine. Now they're not native, and as somebody pointed out, they eat everything, and they also love clams. So they have decimated a lot of our clam flats in coastal Maine. The question is, how often do they interact with lobsters, and do they eat lobsters, right? That's what a lobsterman wants to know. And it's because they're intertidal, and they live in very shallow areas. They don't really live in the subtidal too much, although you will occasionally catch them in we were diving off of Newcastle, New Hampshire, and we caught blue crabs that were about this big in October that were in about 25 feet of water. So the green crabs. Yeah, I'll get to blues in a minute. So greens are a nuisance. They're everywhere. We're trying to figure out how to, you know, can we develop a soft shell fishery? Can we just trap them and burn them? Can we freeze them? You know, the state of Maine requires you to dispose of them if you catch them. That's a law. So I don't know what the green crab solution is other than they're everywhere. So
In
we're
York
just trying to
River,
learn
too.
about.
In the York River too, and
They're
in the
everywhere.
rivers.
They're everywhere. I work in Wells. The entire harbor is carpeted with them. But blue crabs is a newer species, right? So if anybody here is from, you know, Maryland, Virginia, and do not tell me that blue crabs taste better, because we'll probably get thrown out. But blue crabs are a range expanding species. It's different. So their range is typically Cape Cod. And what's happening over the last few years is they're pushing further north. Probably because of warming water temperatures, right? We go back to temperature again. Blue crabs, the difference is blue crabs are large. They are very aggressive. I would never recommend picking them up with your bare hands. But they also have an incredible fishery and a market, and you can market the heck out of them because people will pay top dollar for blue crab. People don't want to eat green crab, even though it actually tastes pretty good. So blue crabs are infiltrating our Gulf of Maine. The question is, just like black sea bass and, you know, other range expanding species, what type of impact will that have on lobsters? We just don't know. We just don't know. 50 years from now, we might have a multi-species fishery where you could go out and get a lobster/blue crab license. Maybe, I don't know. I don't think blue crab is gonna, you know, supersede lobster anytime soon. The past 2 winters have been very cold. We do a lot of trapping in our salt marshes that we manage. We caught, I think, 200 green crabs 3 years ago. Last year we caught 8. And that's because we had a really, really cold winter. So if those crabs were staying in our estuaries and our salt marshes and our bays, they probably were dying because that is way too cold for them. So the verdict is out on what the true impact might be on lobster. Lobsters are really good at moving into deeper water, and those crabs are not typically out there. So is that
We
give you?
trapped them in York River, and the boys sold them to Rhode Island, and they used them for lobster bait.
Yeah.
But they caught so many of them, they ran out.
You mean green crabs?
Green crabs.
Yeah.
But what the green crabs do is that they eat the marsh grass, the roots off the marsh grass.
Yep.
And they burrow in, and that collapses as the.
Yeah, we did a study, and then I want to get to this gentleman's question, but we did a study where we did cores into the salt marsh, and we found green crabs a meter down, so a meter is about this big, like vertically down. There were burrows, so they are really destructive.
Historically, what has been an optimal temperature for lobster in the Gulf of Maine, kind of at what depth?
According to the literature,
What's the
16,
question?
I can't do, the question was, what is an optimal temperature for a lobster in the Gulf of Maine? The studies have been done on this. We did this too. My mentor, Dr. Wynn Watson, showed that lobsters prefer a temperature of 16 degrees Celsius. I do not know what that is in Fahrenheit. So if you want to convert it, just ask your phone. It's something like, I think it's like 60, yeah, sorry. I mean, we have to work in the metric system because every colleague.
It's about 60 degrees, about.
It's about 60.
Right.
We just finished a study where we tagged a bunch of eggers, lobsters with eggs, in the field and in the laboratory, and we basically made them choose which temperatures they prefer as the eggs develop. It's a really interesting study. So lobsters carry their eggs on their tail for up to 9 to 11 months. So a really long development period. So while they're carrying those eggs are growing, and they're growing in context to the temperature. So if they're in warm water, those eggs are going to develop faster, hatch sooner in places like estuaries, right? If they're offshore, they're going to hatch later because colder water. So we actually found that eggers prefer different temperatures at different times of the year. That hadn't been shown before, although the lobstermen probably already knew that. But we showed it with data and research, we published this. So there are differences in temperature. When they get ready to hatch, they prefer actually colder temperature. So they go into deeper holes. That's what we found out at Isles and Shoals, where we did this work. So yeah, it's the temperature they prefer is not the temperature where the temperature trends are going. And above about 20 degrees Celsius, they are very unhappy. They get unhappy, like really unhappy, where they want to move out, right? And that's what they do. So when you heard these guys talking about the New York, Long Island Sound fishery that basically collapsed in the mid-90s, late 90s, that those lobsters were subjected to really high temperatures, harmful algal blooms, pollution, and a bunch of other stuff, hypoxia, like low oxygen. And so if somebody cut off your air, didn't provide a lot of food, and made your life miserable, what are you gonna do? You're gonna get the hell out, right? And you're gonna get out of Dodge, you're gonna move somewhere else. And typically what we've seen is lobsters not necessarily moving north, but moving east. And I really appreciate that these guys said that, because I always correct people. It's not that they're moving all further north into Maine, it's they're moving into deeper water, wherever that is. So if you're on Cape Cod, you're not gonna go north, you're gonna go east, because it's closer. The deeper water is closer if you go east. So lobsters move a lot, they can move quite a bit. And so if they don't like something, they're just gonna move. There's no fences or boundaries to keep them in New Hampshire or Maine or York County or Kittery. So we have to really be vigilant of that, and that's why the lobstermen are probably the best stewards of the ocean, because they see this stuff. They know where they're going. Scientists like me can come in and say, well, let's collect the data on this and show it. It's a perfect relationship as far as that's concerned. And then you get people like Jim who actually gain the perspective of, let's now talk to these folks and see like what their whole perspective is and what can we learn from it. And I'm amazed what we learned in 2020, because it is, a lot of things have changed since 2020, right? So.
Long Island had a double whammy. They had real warm water, and then the aerial spray from mosquitoes. And then it rained, and all of that pesticide went into the ocean and killed it.
So you pick up lobsters in, you can still find lobsters in, we're doing a study now where we're looking at the nutritional health of lobsters from Rhode Island all the way up to down East Maine. We got different sites that we're choosing. We're diving, we're putting cameras down, seeing what they're eating, if they're not eating bait. And the Rhode Island lobsters I've just felt so bad for those lobsters. You pick them up, they're limp, they've got shell disease, they're just completely riddled with shell disease. There's not one lobster we found that was clean, not one. And so in the Gulf of Maine, we see healthier lobsters, but we also see an uptick in shell disease. And that's been seen by lobstermen, Maine DMR surveys, us, and lots of other people. So there are these trends, but I'd like to think that lobsters are really resilient. So strategy number one is move. If you don't like where you are, they're gonna move somewhere different. If those conditions are better for them, they'll probably be fine. Although it then brings up, like, if an egger lobster, a lobster with eggs, has to move further offshore because it's cooler, then will those eggs and those larvae get back to the inshore areas where these guys all fish? Big question marks. Well, we don't know. We just don't know. I would not say we know the answer to that. We do not know.
I don't think that they'll crawl.
Well, they're swimming, so.
I don't think that they'll swim out there.
Well, they do go out there, but we just don't know what the fate of those eggs will be.
Their eggs out there.
We don't know.
Along shore, we call them the walking wounded.
Right, yeah.
Because
You
you
got
only
a
catch
question, Ben?
small
Yeah.
lobsters.
Let's get some other people to ask the
Yeah.
questions, yeah. So
But
I
want-
think
it
you
might-
had a question.
It might be a silly question, but do lobsters live in like colonies or families, or like when they decide to move, it's just an individual decision, I'm leaving?
Yeah, so anybody remember, there was a National Geographic article, it's going way back, probably in the 70s. It was spiny lobster migration in the Bahamas. So a colleague that I only met once, because he's way retired now, he showed that spiny lobsters form basically these migration trains. They all line up. They go from the inshore shallow like waters, and they march out to past the reef, and they hunker down for the winter. Because even in the tropics, you do get storms in the winter. You got hurricane season. You've got higher turbidity, like water quality changes. Spiny lobsters are gregarious, so they will go out in groups. They will do that. Our lobster, not so much. In fact, the only time lobsters really want to be social is when they're mating.
Okay.
After
Like
that,
everything in life.
they don't really want to have anything to do with each other. And you guys will know this. Just look at a lobster tank at the supermarket. They hate being together. They really do.
Thank you.
One question about the bait fish was mentioned several times as perhaps limiting lobsters. I heard from you they can change what they eat, or what are the factors there? What do they eat now,
They
and
have-
what could you change
they have
to, and
huge
would it make it
quotas.
cheaper or more?
You've heard that there's no such fish left in the Gulf of Maine, and there really isn't. So the OSHA, OMOAA, regulates how many metric tons of herring they can
That's
catch a
the current
year.
rate.
So they put the limit on metric tons, and they run out of bait, so there's nothing, so we're using hide now. We use pig hide, and we have to take the hair off it, and that's what they use. It lasts a lot longer, but they used cow hide with hair on it, originally, and the people would open up the lobster and the stomach would be all hairs. So they made a rule that you can't use any hide with hair on it.
So the bait.
You can't take any bait, say from Hannaford. So I went to Hannaford and they butcher all the salmon and Hammond in Hannaford, and I wanted to use the racks. They wouldn't let me use the racks because that's contaminated already with pollution.
So there are quite a few regulations for health, which I think is a good thing. The traditional bait has been salted herring.
Look at the rules, there are just pages and pages.
So the traditional bait has been herring, usually salted herring, because they could store them in barrels for longer periods of time, or you could freeze it. But again, this is because we're in a climate change series here. This is where climate change is not just affecting lobster, it's affecting fish, and it has for a while actually. And bait fish are extremely ephemeral because of climate change. So you have, bait fish come and go, and if you change things in the ocean, plankton, temperature, the chemistry of the water, the acidification of the water, you change what those bait fish are eating. They're not going to become the size that you need to catch, for harvesting for the lobster industry. So alternative baits have been a big thing. As a gentleman pointed out, people are using animal hides. There was a push to use green crabs as bait for a while, but that created some issues because of disease transmission. And then there was, it's an active area of research. Let's just put it that way. Further south, like in southern New England, they're using skate. So they're using alternate species. So that is probably an issue down the road, is consistent bait that's affordable. These guys all mentioned bait cost as prohibitive. So there's,
very long if you use use skates.
Well, skates are used really
They stink.
heavily in Rhode Island. They use them.
My sister went out on
Yeah,
lobstering.
I fished out of Point Judith in Rhode
Yeah, they had
Island.
to
It's
bring
all
her-
skate.
They brought her into Narragansett.
Exactly.
Yeah, one of my favorite stories is Jimmy Baxter brought me some lobster right after he told me that he was using pig hide. And a couple days later said, "How was the lobster?" I said, "Tasted like bacon."
Okay, before we, did anybody else have a burning question? We'll come back to you.
Okay,
but-
mine's quick.
Did you have a question?
I know, I'm so happy to be here and listening to all this stuff. My partner's a third generation lobsterman out of Rye. And I also work with Susan Johnson, Katie's mom, at Coast X, which is a new nonprofit program doing science and engineering and art, and I'm the art director. So the whole thing about why do lobstermen love to go out? Why do artists love to? You know, it's not necessarily about making money or making big changes,
what we
but
do.
it's that spirit. So I'm crazy about all of this that you're talking about.
That's great.
And I go out with my partner as much as I can, and I'm crazy about it. And he thinks I'm insane. Because it stinks, it's loud, we can't talk to each other.
We work really closely. One of my closest colleagues is a New Hampshire Fish and Game lobster scientist for the state of New Hampshire. We've worked together for a while, and again, that's the other thing, is we're always learning from each other, right? And as much as a bad rap that sometimes us scientists can get, you know, I think we do help fill in important gaps in the knowledge. And I've worked, Ed Foy was one of the lobstermen in the film that I worked really closely with for my PhD work. He was amazing. This guy invited me on his boat day one. We went out, I fished with him for weeks. You know, had to be on the boat at like 4 a.m. collecting data, and then anytime I wasn't doing science, I'm helping him. So it's a win-win for them because he learned a lot, I learned a lot from him, and it's a two-way street. Yeah, and there's some nice boats. I will say, you know, someone like that they fish offshore. You know, the Isles of Shoals is not it's a completely different fishery. The lobsters are different, the habitat is different, the depths are much deeper. You can't compare that to like coastal Rye, New Hampshire, or, you know, even Kittery. But it is really cool because you don't have to go very far on the water to see very big differences, as you may have seen yourself, right?
And I've been going out on the boat with him for 6 or 7 years now, and I can see the difference. And I don't have the history, and I don't have the knowledge. And he's got 3 blue crabs in the past couple of years. He's like, never ever saw it. And the things that I'm not seeing anymore, that I used to see, but for me, every time it comes up, there's all these cool things. You know, weird things that I've never seen before, new things. And, you know, I'm like a kid, just like, oh, that's cool. You know, and then what the local lobstermen have, names for different fish or different things, that is their own language, and that's pretty cool too.
Okay. One
Yeah,
last
any
question,
last couple
maybe?
questions?
Yeah, last 2 questions.
What makes a good lobster season? That was my question. Prior to that particular summer, is it temperature of water? Is it technology? I mean, what would create a good lobster season?
You want to take it? I mean, I think
It's water temperature.
Water temperature.
Yeah, water temperature really, that, and, you know, not too many big storms.
Yeah.
Because the storms, when these guys get all their gear out there, there's a lot of gear.
I mean, they could spend weeks just untangling rope and trap.
I mean, we put out a few experimental traps. One storm comes by and we're spending like an hour untangling lines. That is not fun. And they all said that. They all said that, you know, if they had to pick one thing they don't like, the common denominator for them was storms and lines. So
Yeah, when a trap's $100 each and they're crushed.
yeah, it's expensive. But I think A good season is you've got favorable temperatures and at predictable times. And the issue is what used to be predictable is no longer holds because of climate change. There is no other reason. I don't know what the other reason would be. It's not random. Nothing in the ocean like that is random. It's
I just didn't know, like salinity or
salinity. Well,
turbidity or-
salinity would be a product of storms. So if you had a really bad, like a really wet summer with a lot of rain, you're going to have more runoff. You're going to have these freshwater plumes, and they're going to change the salinity, and so lobsters might redistribute themselves. If it's a cold summer, like we had a cold summer actually, ironically, it's an N of 1, but we had a cold summer last year, and the lobsters were very late to show up. You ask any of the lobstermen, that's what they tell you. We went scuba diving in May, we didn't see one lobster at like our tried and true reef site. We saw 0 lobsters, which I've never seen in my whole life. We had somebody from Australia visiting, a scientist. I told him, oh, you'll see a lobster on this dive. I guarantee it. I'm still embarrassed. Being in Maine and not being able to show somebody else. We had to go to Hannaford's and get one cooked up. So I'm still recovering from that. But those environmental variables are less predictable under this new realm of climate change. They just are. I mean, the fishermen will agree to that. It's something I think we could all agree to is the unpredictability. But we have the resilience, we have the knowledge of the fishermen, the scientists, and the people that are documenting it. And I think that is what really tips it in a positive way.
You know, one of the things that I was so impressed with going out with all of them, each one of them, they knew, looking at the sky, they could feel it in the breeze, they could look at the water and tell you, we've got to go in. And it looked fantastic. And sure enough, every time the weather would change, just like they saw, they know from being out there, they just know when something bad is going to turn, and they're going in. Yeah, it's pretty impressive. It was a lot of fun.
And you did a great job.
Well, thank you.
Great job.